Hi, we are live, and actually we're going live actually for the first time across Sister and Killing Kittens. Normally the topics are quite separate from, even though it's from bedroom to boardroom when it comes to the other companies under KK, but we thought that the subject, the domestic abuse and the control and surviving it, and it covers every woman out there, and it's not just a sexual thing. It's such a massive topic, and we thought that actually it was right to put it out there across our entire empire of women members. And we're joined by the amazing Caron Kipping, who has 14 years working within domestic abuse and is a separation and divorce coach as well, and has a book out, Recognition to Recovery, which is all full of amazing tips and techniques and signs of and getting out of abusive relationships. But as always, you know how I like a story, and to get into the real grit of what makes people do what they do. What you've got a story, and how did you? And I apologise for the children shouting downstairs because I might end up with a bit of a domestic abuse going on in the background. How did you get into it?
So when I was 17, I moved away from home down south. I'm a northerner originally, moved down south to do some training. So I was training as a nurse at the time. So I was away from home, had lots of friends on my course as part of the training, but really had struggled for the past year or so with confidence and things like that, and was really looking for a serious boyfriend, thinking that was just going to make me feel better and make me happy. And then along came who was going to turn out to be my ex-husband, my first husband. So very quickly that relationship became quite serious, and I'd never had a serious relationship before. And quite early on in that relationship, he moved in. I lost the friends that I had. I just became very isolated. My confidence became worse. I knew it wasn't right, but it was emotionally abusive, and it was very controlling, and he was very jealous, etc. But there was no physical abuse, and I didn't really understand what was going on or how to get myself out of it. So we ended up staying together for 10 years. And like lots of people in abusive relationships, I thought if we got married, it would get better. If we had our own house, he would feel more secure. If we had a baby, we would have this proper family unit. And of course, none of those things work. It just got worse. And so, we were together for 10 years. And when I did really, kind of stand up and think, actually, I can't do this anymore, then it became worse. It did then become a bit physical. The separation was awful. I ended up in family court, lost the house, lost contact with my child, ended up in debt, had no money. It was just a disaster. So that was my story, which wasn't a great story. But it has turned out okay in the end. I'm very happily married now. I've got another 2 children. I've got a fantastic relationship with my daughter, have climbed out of debt and, got a very happy life now. But it took years. It took a long time, and I didn't have any help at the time. So I just had to figure it out for myself, and ended up making some really rubbish, mistakes, decisions, bad decisions, because I didn't really know what I was doing. And I kept it all to myself because I didn't think that people would understand. There were only a couple of close friends that really knew what was going on, and they were really brilliant, and I couldn't have got out of it without them. But it took me a long time to recover. And then a few years after I had separated from him, I'd kind of figured out by that time how to manage him and how to get back to being me again. So I wanted to help other people. So I trained as a domestic abuse specialist, went to work for a local domestic abuse charity, and that's where I've been working for 14 years, supporting mainly women in really high-risk abusive relationships. And then about 18 months ago, I did another coaching qualification and trained as a divorce coach. And so now I support women all over the UK that are going through divorces from very controlling husbands, and, you know, trying to separate from those kind of emotionally abusive, financially abusive relationships. So, yeah, so that's
And
kind
yeah, the way you can talk about it so matter of factly, and it's like I've been there, done that, got the various t-shirts, grew up as a kid to the t-shirts above me, and I know, and when I talk about it, it's very matter of fact, and people say it's matter, but it's, you look back and you go, wow, that was hell on earth. But and also I don't know if you, because people often say to me, and I think this is a big thing, is you don't think it's going to happen to you. And I think, and that was one of my worst ones. And I'd had relationships, and then I went through one, and I was 30s and gobby, and I'd started KK, and I, you know, was opinionated and assertive, and it was, before that I had always been that person that had gone, why aren't these women leaving them? Why are they staying with these guys? Why do they let them get the shit kicked out of them? Why? And it's not till you're in it, and the games that are played, and I was only coming out and chatting to a couple of girlfriends who were like me, that kind of realized that actually that strong female, it's like breaking a wild horse in. And I was a challenge, and that challenge to break me and isolate me, and you then get it all, you see the spiral, and then because you want to fix everything and you hate failure, when they're sobbing in front of you that they can't live without you and they need you in their lives, you stay, and because you want to fix them, because you see that like 1% glimmer of they're a good person, and that's your makeup and like my psyche to help. So it was after that you realize that actually it can happen to anyone, and
literally,
even so what so on that, what is an abusive relationship? Like, what, because also a lot of people who haven't been in one would say abusive relationship, well, that's getting the shit kicked out of you, that's an abusive relationship. But it's not, you know, it's not, it's a real spectrum.
It is absolutely a spectrum. So, you know, most people will say that emotional abuse is worse than physical abuse, because physical abuse, as difficult as that is, you know, bruises and broken bones, they heal. You know, obviously it is very dangerous, and 2 women still die every week in this country because of domestic abuse. And for most of those women, they would have had a long period of controlling behaviour and jealousy and all that kind of stuff, but maybe not necessarily physical abuse. So just because your relationship is emotionally abusive and it's controlling, but it's not physical, doesn't necessarily mean that you are safe, right? So yeah, it does consist of lots of different things. So there's, you know, isolation, you know, how they isolate you from your friends and family, make it really difficult for you to maintain those relationships and to see other people, because they're a threat, obviously, and they don't want you to have any interaction with anybody else. There's economic abuse, which is, you know, withholding money, you know, really taking that financial control. And I see that a lot in my coaching clients, where maybe their husband has paid for everything, you know, he's controlled all the money, you know, controlled the investments and the properties all in his name, etc. And then if she chooses to leave, she's trapped. She's got nothing, you know, she's got no independent income. No, maybe she hasn't worked for years because she's been looking after the children at home. So economic and financial abuse is really difficult. There's things like post-separation abuse. So even if you do separate, doesn't necessarily mean that that abuse is going to stop. So if you've got children together, you've still got to communicate. you know, he's still going to have contact with your children. And very often they will use the children as a bit of leverage. So they will start questioning the children about you, finding out if you've got a new boyfriend. You know, they might try and turn the children against you, try and gain favour with the children by buying them loads of things that they know that you can't afford. So all of those kind of things. And it is the emotional abuse that is really difficult. So it is that constant criticism, you know, belittling, putting you down, making you believe that it's all your fault, making you feel guilty, you know. And when you're living with that day in, day out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, of course it's going to grind you down. And that's why it's hard to leave, you know, and not just the practical stuff about leaving, or whether you're trying to get your abusive partner out of your home. It's the emotional stuff, you know. It's really difficult to unhear the things that you've heard before. And you start questioning yourself. You start going, well, is it me? Am I to blame? Am I just as bad as he is, you know? So yeah, it is really difficult.
It's quite a passive. I think some of the worst is passive. When it's blatant, then it's more obvious. It's not just physical but emotional. It's that passive aggressive manipulation where your gut says it's not right, and then you kind of question it, and then they're smiling and being very sort of passive, and you think, oh well, maybe that's just me, maybe I'm having a bad day, maybe I'm a bit emotional, maybe I'm a bit hormonal, maybe I'm the one out of order. And it's just it's the real manipulation in your head that where you just doubt yourself.
Yeah, you doubt everything, and they can be very charming to everybody else.
Always.
You know? Yeah, they can be really charming. And so then you think, well, if I do start talking about this, nobody's going to believe me because everybody else thinks he's great.
And I'm just being silly. Maybe I'm just being a bit insecure and that's the thing, is I'm being a bit insecure, you know, to kind of doubt him. But a lot of people, I just find it really sad because you know, even in sort of my friendship groups and people I see, it's actually, I would probably say 50% are emotionally abusive relationships, and they don't. It's so hard watching and seeing, and it's from just. And the way some of these have been in it for ages, and they just kind of package it up as like, it's just romantic. He just, you know, when I'm out with friends, he just sort of wants to check I'm okay. And you're like, well, checking 20 times in a night out, it's not, I mean, it's not okay. And it's like, that's one of the things that I knew my current hubby, my hubby, is right. It's because I'd go out and I'd have a message from him going, have a good time. And then I could be out till 4 or 5 in the morning, and I wouldn't have had another message from him. And I thought, does he not love me? And then you realize that actually that's normal.
That's normal.
That's trusting someone.
Yeah. You have to retrain your brain. Once you've been in an abusive relationship, that feels normal to you, but that isn't normal. So when you come out of it, it takes time to retrain your brain and think normally, you know, because you do question things and you do doubt things because of how they've made you feel before. So that takes time. So that's why I wrote the book, Recognition to Recovery, because there are certain techniques that you can use that can help you with that recovery, right? And just little techniques that will help you get your confidence back and get your self-esteem back and find out who you are again. Because once you've left, quite often you don't actually know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
You don't know what you like. You know, I didn't know, you know, whether I liked my hair long or whether I liked it short, because I'd always been told how to dress and told how to look, told how to behave with other people. So you have to kind of find yourself again afterwards. So.
And what are the because there's some people, you know, and I've had messages when we said we were doing this, from people who, you know, who said, I think I'm in a controlling relationship, I'm not sure. And what would you say, you know, are the absolute classic, those sort of real classic, but the passive aggressive, the most subtle signs for people to look out for?
Well, I always say, if it feels wrong, it probably is wrong, right? Because you should always trust your gut instinct. It's like a sixth sense, you know. We quite often go, oh no, I'm just, you know, making a big issue out of nothing, and you dismiss it. And the problem is the more you dismiss it, the more you are actually letting your boundaries down, and you're almost allowing that behavior to keep continuing. So if somebody is making you feel bad about yourself, if somebody is criticizing you, if somebody is belittling you, you know, then that's not right, because a relationship should be equal. But in an abusive relationship, there tends to be one person that's much more dominant than the other one. And, you know, if somebody isn't valuing your opinion or your feelings, you know, if you're saying, look, what you just said to me, or what you just did, that actually really hurt me, or it made me upset, it made me worried, and they're not listening to you, they're excusing their behavior, they're trying to justify it, then that's not right. You know, it's just not right. Because, yeah, it's a whole pattern of behavior, and they won't just use one tactic either. So like you said before, you know, they might be crying and pleading, and then they'll switch when that doesn't work, and they'll start bullying and threatening and being aggressive and getting in your face, maybe threatening to take the kids off you, threatening to take the house off you and leave you with no money. So if they're doing these kind of things, then that's what we call coercive control, right? And that's just that whole pattern of jealousy and controlling behavior. And the thing is once that creeps into a relationship, and it does creep in, it just, you know, you have this kind of honeymoon period at the beginning, and then it kind of drips in. Once you've got that in a relationship, it's never going to get better. So if you are waiting for them to change, or waiting for, you know, the kids to leave home, or them to get a better job, or the pandemic to be over, or whatever, that behaviour is still going to be there. And there's never a good time to leave. So, you know, if you are in an abusive relationship, you just have to think it's not going to get better, and their behaviour won't change. So the only thing you can do is change the way that you think, and, you know, change your situation and take back that control.
Because it's quite subtle. Not a lot of times it's subtle when they start making you doubt yourself, and that's the thing, because you can, as you said, you know, like, oh, like, especially like female intuition is there, and you get it instantly, and you just know, and your gut. So many times I've overridden it, but the minute you override it, then actually they start. Remember, kind of one of the many ones I had. One of his things he always said was, you should hear what your friends are saying. I'm not the only one that thinks this about you. It was constant. And when I'd say, well, who? Well, I'm not going to tell you who, because that's, you know, but you just need to know that this isn't just coming from me. Your friends are thinking this. And I remember that was a real one that got in my head of, shit, well, actually, maybe I am the one. So then I was overriding my gut, and that because I doubted my gut, and I doubted what I thought of myself, because apparently all my friends thought the same about me. He did. So it's, yeah.
They're very believable. They're very believable. And yeah, and, you know, if somebody is knocking your confidence down all the time, you are going to believe what they say. If they say it enough times, you believe it, don't you? So
yeah, exactly. But on coming out, how, because that's part of it. I mean, especially the coercive control and emotion, it probably is the worst, and it's the one that really, really affects you. But probably some of the really abusive stuff is the full-on one. It's hard. It's not that just easy to leave. It's not that easy to walk out the door. What's your advice on coming out, on leaving, going when the pennies dropped, of just getting out?
Yeah. So the main thing is to try and have a plan. So don't, the worst thing you can say is, right, I'm leaving you, I'm taking the kids, because that's just going to kind of like escalate things. So what I would say is just try and kind of act normal, but try and get your information and get your plan together. So think about, do you want to stay in your home and try and get your partner out of the home? There's certain orders that you can go to court to get, which will remove them from the home. They're not always easy to get, but it's worth speaking to a solicitor to see if that's an option for you. Or you can think about, if you want to leave, and you want to go with the kids, like, where would you go? Would you go and stay with a friend, in the short term? Have you got a bit of money that you can access that you could maybe go and rent somewhere for a bit? If it's really bad and you need to completely get away, then refuge is always an option. So I would say the first thing is to kind of grit your teeth and be strong and stay focused and remember the reasons why you want to end this relationship, right? Because it's not easy, but if you can stay focused and just know kind of that you've got a plan, then that's going to help you stay strong. So get your clarity, speak to the professionals, speak to your local domestic abuse organisation. All right, those calls are free, it's confidential. They will talk you through all the different options in terms of practical help, and they'll give you the emotional support at each step. So you literally just Google domestic abuse support in my area and it should come up. So you can call them, or you can call somebody like me, who's a divorce coach that specialises in abusive relationships, right? The way that I work, it's confidential. And I will do exactly the same, talk you through the different options, what you want to do, because it's really important that you have that choice. I can't tell you what to do because it's not my life, it's your life. And you know what you can cope with and what you want to do. So I just tell you the pros and cons of the different options and then leave you to decide. But what I will do is I will support you each step of the way. If you're worried about your safety, obviously you've got the police to call. And I would say get a really good support team around you. So that could be a couple of key friends or family members that you can confide in. And you can say, look, this is what's been happening. Something's got to change. I've decided now's the time. All right, we've got to separate. I can't live in this situation like this anymore. So I need you to help me. So doing those things is just your kind of short-term plan. And then after that, everything else will start to fall into place. So the key thing is just to take it one step at a time, literally. Think about safety first and foremost above everything. All right. If you do need to leave your house, how are you going to get out? What is your plan A? And also have a backup plan B as well, because quite often they have a sixth sense and they just get an inkling something's changing. So don't leave stuff lying around in the house, information that you've maybe got from solicitors or whatever. You do have to be really careful. And they are going to try all sorts of things. They're going to threaten you. They're going to threaten to report you to social services maybe. They might, start twisting things and telling friends and family their version of the story, right, which might be completely different to your version. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for the lies and the manipulation. They may, be crying and trying to make you feel guilty for breaking up the family, etc. So you just, have to kind of keep your focus on you rather than on them. Remember the reasons why, this relationship has broken down, right? Don't feel guilty because it's not your fault, right? If they've been abusing you, there's no excuse for that, right? Nobody deserves to be abused and it's not going to get better. And if you've got children together, your children growing up in that environment is not going to be, you know, a good thing, right? Because children pick up on a lot, right? They hear things, they see much more than you ever think that they do. And, you know, I've known lots of women that have stayed for the sake of the kids, they thought, but then years down the line, those kids have got, you know, significant mental health problems and, you know, their own issues because of the trauma. So, you know, it's not worth staying for the sake of the children. You know, if it's bad, get out, get the support and get the help, because there is lots of help out there. That's the thing.
Do you think on that,
sorry, I was just going to say that's another reason why I wrote the book, because when I was going through it, there was no help, absolutely none. And I was thinking to myself, God, I've got all that. There is so much help there, but people don't know about it. So if people could understand that at an earlier stage, then maybe it wouldn't have to get so bad before they get out. So.
Do you think having who you work with and experience and stuff, and you know, you mentioned the children then, do you think that actually, because I was, you know, I had a talk with someone who, and we were talking about that generational abuse that, you know, it's your mum and your aunts and your grandmothers, you know, like it's in your DNA a lot of the time, that same messaging. Do you see a kind of, because I remember just from person, I remember someone saying to me when I suddenly realized I had a pattern of arseholes on that front, especially the manipulative, clever bastards ones, of going, hang on a minute, I remember spotting it and going to see someone, and they said, do you feel like the minute you meet these men, you've known them all your lives and you're really comfortable with them, and you're like, oh my God, I've just clicked with them. And I'm like, yes, it's that instant, oh, we're meant to be together. And she said, I remember her saying, it's not necessarily a good thing. You're just used to that behavioral pattern growing up, so you're comfortable with it. It doesn't make it a good thing. I was sat in my comfort zone of that's how I was used to men behaving, so it felt really good and all cozy.
Yeah. And there's a phrase that we use now called love bombing. Have you heard of that?
No.
So love bombing is, at the beginning, they basically bombard you with affection. So they are Prince Charming.
All of them did. Yeah.
Prince Charming, you know, love of your life, you know, we're going to be together forever. I've never felt like this before about anything else. You know, it's passionate, it's full on, you know, all of that. It's just everything that you've ever wanted, right? And they do that at the beginning to hook you in really quickly. But then what happens is then that controlling behavior kind of drifts in. But by then you're already in it big time.
You're hooked.
You're hooked.
Like,
you're hooked, yeah. And it's like a drug, to be honest, because it gives you this massive high. And they've looked at it, and it's actually a chemical reaction in your brain, right? It makes you addicted to them, basically.
Yeah.
And then when you realise that it is abusive, you have this crashing low. And when you try to leave, there's a thing called trauma bonding, right? And it basically pulls you back to them, because it's that classic, you know, can't live with them, can't live without them scenario. You know, you're not happy when you're with them because they're abusing you and they're being horrible to you, but you can't live without them either because you don't know how to do that. And it's like complete devastation when they're not there. So you have this real dilemma going on. You know, I always talk about the Disney version versus the reality. So you have the Disney version over here, which is all kind of hearts and flowers and, you know, Tweety birds and, you know, Prince Charming and all of that. And then you have the reality over here, which is actually, it's a pretty rotten relationship. There might be like a little 1% of it that is really lovely, and that's the 1% that you hang on to for dear life. But the rest of it is pretty grim, and you have to kind of get to a point where you accept that actually this is the reality over here, right? You ain't got this Disney version, that doesn't exist, right? That was just in your head and something that they made you believe.
Damn. And what because what is really tricky is I've got an echo going on, is if you're friends or family and you're looking and you're seeing it happening, you know, like I would say it happen in friends and you can't. What's your advice on that? Because I think that's also really hard when you see people close to you get, you know, I start isolating themselves from you from, and you know what's happening, but there's not much you can do about it. What is your advice for, yeah.
It is difficult. It is difficult, especially if you've been through a similar thing yourself as well, because you can see it. You know, you can see it and they can't. But you can't tell them to leave. You can't tell them to end it, because if they can't see it, then they're not going to do that. And actually, if you tell them to do that, it might make them back off.
Yeah. You, you isolate yourself more from them.
Yeah. And also, you don't want to talk about it or try and get them to question, you know, their partner every time you meet up with them or every time you speak to them, because again, they might think, oh, well, I'm not going to go and see her today because all she's going to do is like she's going to have a go at me. So the thing is to just gently kind of drip feed it in and get them to question it for themselves. So, you know, if they mention something that their partner's done or something that they've said, you know, that's a criticism or it's a bit belittling or something like that, then you can say back, oh, you know, that sounded a bit critical. You know, what do you think? Do you think that sounded okay? I'm not sure. So you're getting them to actually start questioning that behaviour for themselves so that they then come up with the right answer eventually. Yeah. And just really keep reaching out to them, stay in contact with them, keep trying to encourage them to do the things that they were doing before the isolation, before they withdrew. So keep inviting them to things, right? Keep encouraging them, boost their confidence, tell them, you know, that they're amazing, that they're a lovely person, you know, all the really kind of positive things, because they probably don't believe that. They're probably being told that they're not confident, that they're not attractive, that nobody likes them anymore, you know. So they're being drip fed all of this negativity. So if you can try and counteract that with some positivity, all right, and let them know that no matter what, you're always there for them, that's what they need.
Yeah, because one of the big things I've noticed, just through age and having kids and like friends doing the same, is one big classic one is and it's all very well, and I know other friends who give up work and they're really happy to do that and it's their choice and they want to be a full-time mom, and that's totally fine and 100% respect for that. But when you see the ones who they're giving up because they say, oh well, he's earns loads of money and he's told me that I don't need to work and that he's going to support us, and wouldn't it be nice for you to be there for the children the whole time when they're little, and you can hear it and go, hang on a minute, this isn't your choice. This is
if it's your choice, then great, because everybody has like a set of rules, their relationship, their family that work for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, if it's your choice, then that's absolutely fine. But it's when it's subtly and underhandedly done over time and you don't recognise it, and it's done as a way of keeping you isolated and keeping you dependent on them, that's when it's not right.
Yeah, I know, and it's very easy when kids are tiny to use that as the excuse of, well, you've got to be there as the mum and it's fine because I earn enough money and can support you, and to see that as not being looked after.
I see that.
And coming out, because obviously you specialize in divorce and with that kind of recovery after domestic abuse and them going through divorce. So on that front, what's kind of your big advice on people divorcing in those scenarios? Because there's a lot of the time they have no control of the finances. They might have quit their job, years and years before. They don't have any access to the bank accounts or anything like that. The house might not be in the name. What sort of biggest things that you see?
So most solicitors will give you a bit of free advice initially.
Mm.
You know, they'll kind of tell you what the situation is and what their strategy might be. Sometimes you can apply for like interim costs, interim maintenance and things like that, or you can come up with like a separation agreement, which means that he's going to carry on paying for certain things, right, until the financial settlement is done. But it's not a quick process. You have to be prepared for it to last, you know, maybe a year, 2 years, right, before it's finalised, maybe longer, depending on how complicated your finances are and your situation is, and if you've got children, etc. But the thing is, if you get support along the way, then it's a lot easier, right? You've just got to be prepared to be strong and stay focused and just keep focused on the end goal, right? Because you will get there, but it's a bit of a roller coaster as you go.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's still better than living with somebody that's abusing you all the time, right? Because you get stronger as time goes on.
Yeah, and on that part, on the recovery front, what you know, they go to, what's your advice on that? Are the best places to go to, or the best things to do to kind of get that, you know, get their identity back and the confidence back, and the what are your tools on
So
that?
I always talk about the ABC strategy. So the A is your actions. So they're the things that you need to do practically to move forwards, right, with your situation. So it might be, you know, thinking about where you're going to live. It might be thinking about your finances. It might be thinking about kids and schools and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And, you know, reaching out to solicitors or financial advisors or whatever. That can be quite challenging, you know, when you're having to do those things all the time. And it can often seem like there's a lot of things in the way and a lot of hurdles to jump over. And it can become quite emotionally draining. So you can't just focus on that 24 hours a day, right? Because it will drive you mad. So you can do as much as you can do for your actions, but then in the meantime, you also need to try and create a bit of balance. So it's not all negative. So start on your B's, all right? And that's your building resilience. So that is doing the things that help you feel stronger, the things that help you feel calmer, the things that help you cope a lot better. So that is staying connected with your friends, the ones that are going to lift you up, keeping connected with your family, using your support team, right, when you need them, when you're having a wobble, all right, or you need a bit of practical help with the kids or whatever. It could be doing things like yoga, meditation, exercising, all of those things that kind of, you know, get you back to being you again. And also that stop you from being dependent on your ex.
Mm.
And then you'll see is you're creating a happier future. So that is starting to look forwards. So starting to plan things in your diary, starting to think about the home that you're going to start creating. Start thinking about what life is going to be like now you're no longer miserable and, you know, and unhappy and, you know, in a really toxic and horrible relationship, you know, because life can be happy. Right, you can start to have fun again. You can start to have a better relationship with your friends and your family. You can start to become a better parent because you feel calmer. You're not being constantly criticised all the time. So if you can do those things in kind of tandem, right, that works brilliantly. Right, that will give you a lot more balance as you go through that kind of difficult bit. And I always say it's just a short-term bit that is difficult, right? It might be a year or 2 years, but you've still got a lot of years left to live afterwards. You know? You've got a long life ahead of you to be happy. You just got to get grit your teeth and get through that interim bit.
Yeah, and just finally on that bit, because it's all you can get out of it, and you know, you get a support back, let network back, and but if then someone else comes along and they're ultra romantic, and the same thing happens. That's the bit. Like with me, it was that bit. It wasn't till I could see and I did something about it to go, and then actually I could see it instantly, and then I was very skeptical of anyone who was instantly and like my hubby totally grew on me. It was not, I didn't have that, and that's when I knew it was right.
You have to have a bit of space. You have to have a bit of space. Don't jump from one bad relationship into a new relationship and think that that is going to save you. All right. You need to have time to find yourself again. All right. To grow as a person, to learn from, your last relationship, what was bad about it, what was going on in terms of your boundaries, thinking about who you are, what your values are as a person, thinking about what you actually want from a new relationship. So you've got to do all that work, right, before you jump into a new relationship. You've got to know the warning signs to look out for.
Yeah, remembering that beginning bit. Remember how you felt and what he was doing right at the beginning that got you hooked. If you remember those signs.
Yeah, if you know the warning signs at the beginning, then you can filter out the ones that are no good, right? It's not saying that, you should hold off dating altogether, right? But if you know the warning signs, then you can quickly get rid of the ones that are toxic, that are likely to turn into controlling relationships before you get hooked. That's the key. And then, if you're happy in yourself and you're happy with your life and who you are, and you're confident again and back to being you, and you've got good boundaries, if somebody comes into your life then and a relationship happens, right, because it'll probably be the right one. And then you can relax because you know that you've got a good relationship. That's the key.
You gotta be selfish. That's what. Whenever I say that, what? I'm like, no, you got to be selfish. And I remember going, do you know what? I've got such a great routine and hobbies and habits and friends, and I'm not going to change any of that. And whoever comes along needs to fit into that.
Yeah,
The right person will be the one that fits into my routine and my setup. Me.
Yeah, exactly. Because you never get that time back again anyway when you've gone into a new relationship. So why not be selfish? You've given up so much for somebody else that when you come out of it, it is your time to be selfish, to just enjoy not having to think about anybody else or be responsible for anybody else's feelings. Just do what you want to do when you want to do it. No questions. You don't have to justify it. Just enjoy it for a bit.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? Well, that was amazing. And do you know what? You and me are sat there as like living proof that you can come out of it. You can come out of it and you can be happy. So
you absolutely can.
Karen's bit Recognition to Recovery. It's on Amazon. There it is. If anyone out there, just get it. If you're a bit doubtful or you just don't know, and you can't just click your fingers and just snap out of a relationship like that. So, and Karen's there if anyone wants to contact her. But thank you. That was great. That was sort of the minefield that could be spoken about for hours, but it was little snippets into that world. So thank you.
Thank you, Emma.